The RBA delivered a rate cut of 0.25 percentage points. This is the first mortgage relief in more than 4 years. And the cash rate will now fall from 4.35% to 4.1%. Leading economists are concerned this could set back the fight against inflation, that this outcome today is a result of political pressure. And indeed, RBA Governor Michelle Bullock faced an intense political campaign to cut rates ahead of the election. Labor MPs publicly urged her to cut by double the usual amount, up to 50 basis points, despite grave concerns from economists. And a group of Labor politicians, including Mike Friedlander, Graham Perrott, Brian Mitchell, Rob Mitchell and Sam Ray, all piled on the pressure on Michelle Bullock in comments in the Australian newspaper today. And others, including union figures, went on camera.
If they make a decision today not to cut interest rates, it would be a dire mistake.
And I reckon that they deserve some rate relief.
I want to cut, Kieran. I absolutely want to cut. My job is to stand up for my community, and we need a cut.
Free TAFE, cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines, more bulk billing.
Before the election?
Well, we all would. We're all, any of us who've got a mortgage would like one, that's for sure.
Now the RBA faces accusations that they caved in to political pressure because there's an election on. Now, we don't have full transparency over the precise vote that took place at the RBA board, whether it was unanimous or which members voted for or against a cut. But Michelle Bullock did indicate today that it was a heated discussion.
It was a difficult decision in the sense that there were arguments on both sides. And what I would say is that the board had a very active debate of the arguments on both sides on this, but in the end came to the view that the better decision was to ease a little bit of the restrictiveness, still maintain some restrictiveness, but ease a little bit of restrictiveness in recognition that we are making progress towards our goal.
Sitting around the RBA board table is Stephen Kennedy, the Treasury Secretary and good friend of Jim Chalmers. And you'd imagine he would have been arguing strongly for a cut. Not only would this boost Albanese's electoral chances, but also fascinating research shows that the suburbs worst hit by rising mortgages are in Labor electorates. This is research from the Parliamentary Library. It was commissioned by the Coalition. And it shows that 12 of the 15 most impacted suburbs are in Labor seats. And these include Salisbury and Adelaide, where mortgage repayments increased from $679 to $2,117. You can just imagine how those families would be struggling. Then Bayswater in the Labor seat of Perth, where the monthly mortgage rose 209% to $2,335 a month. And Woodridge in Jim Chalmers' seat of Rankin, where repayments have increased by 173%. But all Australians have felt this pain. In total, Australians have had more than 13 rate hikes, and 12 of those were under Albanese. And you remember how Albanese blamed Scott Morrison for that first rate hike back in the 2022 election campaign. Well, he doesn't take responsibility now for the other 12. And remember, Australia is still and has been in a per capita recession for 2 years. A family with a typical mortgage will have spent $50,000 more on mortgage repayments since Albanese came to government. That's according to Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor, who made the point today that prices just aren't going to come down anytime soon.
Now, Labor's own forecasts don't get us back to the living standards that they inherited back when they won the election in 2022. They don't get us back to those living standards until 2030. With further downgrades today, it's a long way back.
Treasurer Jim Chalmers, of course, celebrated the rate cut and indicated the end is in sight for the cost of living crisis.
It's a demonstration of the progress that Australians have made together in this fight against inflation. Now, that progress that we've made has been substantial it is now sustained, and it's reflected in the decision taken by the Reserve Bank today. Now, when we came to office, inflation and interest rates were rising. Now both are falling. This is the soft landing that we have been planning for and preparing for.
And you'll hear more of that messaging as the election campaign officially gets underway. But this rate cut comes despite some economists warning that, yes, while headline inflation is now within the RBA's 2 to 3% target, this is because it has been artificially lowered by Labor's cost of living subsidies. This is only temporary, and headline inflation is expected to rise back above target when the subsidies stop. And underlying inflation is still above 3%. And economists are concerned this decision could push back the fight against inflation. It isn't yet over, as much as Albanese would like to wish it away.
Michelle Bullock was very keen to note, actually, there is a scenario by where if we get things wrong here, we might have to raise interest rates again. And that really would be bad for the Reserve Bank's credibility, but also quite clearly very bad for Australia's economy as well.
This would have been a bit of a knife-edge decision for her. And you can read in the statement, indeed, that she's forecasting that it's not going to necessarily be the case that this is the first of several rate drops this year.
So as you just heard there from Ross Greenwood, explaining her decision, Michelle Bullock said that this rate cut doesn't mean further relief is coming. And that was a curious comment. So here she was again today.
I can't say one and done. What I can say is that we've done one, we've removed a bit of restrictiveness, we are still restrictive, and we are waiting for more evidence that we're getting inflation sustainably back in the band before we are willing to move again.
Former Treasury Assistant Secretary David Pearl, he'll be on the show tonight, and his view is that this RBA cut is premature. He says if it needs to be reversed, then our inflation problem will be worse and the credibility of the RBA will be in tatters. Now, make no mistake, this decision today will play into the election timing. And Albanese is now poised to call the federal election imminently. Most likely, it'll be held in early April. A poll that, for many, can't come soon enough.